Hey friends, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be showing how to use perfect pearls on your card making projects and all of the versatility and shine that they provide. So we're going to be creating a couple different cards today as I walk you through my favorite ways to use them and a couple of techniques to keep your space really clean as you're going. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so as you guys can see, these are perfect pearls. Now there is a perfect pearl color, which is of course the pearlescent one, but then there's a bunch of other pearl powders here that you can use to create different shine on your card making projects and lots of color as well. Now before I get started on the techniques, let's bring in my piece of 12 by 12 cardstock. I take a piece of cardstock and use this as my work surface to keep things neat and tidy. That way I can take this to the trash once I'm done and kind of wipe it over there and then throw it away once everything is all complete, but it helps keep my table nice and clean. For the first technique, we're going to use brilliant baubles, and I'm going to walk you through my favorite ways to stamp these down because there's definitely some ways to do it to make it easier and keep things nice and clean in your work surface. So I liked these because they have a little bit of detail on the inside as well as their outline. So I'm going to pull out my favorite ones that I want to use. As you guys can see, my set is pretty well loved. This was one of my favorite stamp sets that I made last year. So I'm going to grab two of ornaments. I'll grab the string for the ornament and then the branch as well. Alright, so I'm going to grab a piece of my black cardstock. I've got my two ornaments mounted down onto an acrylic block here so we can stamp them together. And I'm going to use Versamark ink. You want to use a really clear and sticky ink that's going to stay wet for a long time. So you can either use this or Ranger's Perfect Medium to kind of help things stick down. The Perfect Medium pad is more of like a glue pad, which might help if you're having a hard time getting them to stick really easily. So I'm going to just press this down onto my surface. I'm going to use a piece of black cardstock here because I find that it really helps to kind of pop off the card when you're using these powders. So you guys can kind of slightly see that stamping once we're done with it, and then we can pick out some pearl powders to go along with and color our ornaments. Alright, so once I've picked out my colors, we can go in with them. For the first one, I'm going to use a little bit of copper, and this is going to start off with our first technique already here. I'm going to take the fine brush, and this is just the most basic way to use perfect pearls. I'm going to kind of swipe it onto the surface like this. You can see I'm picking up a pretty little amount of powder. You don't need much, a little bit goes a long way. I'll kind of wipe my brush off to the side here, and we can close that off. You want to make sure to kind of seal them up because they can get a little bit messy if you have them open. And then we'll grab a little bit more. We're going to mix in gold. And the cool part about this is you can mix colors together, which I love to do. I don't love to go in with just one flat solid color. It's really fun to go in with two different types of powders and mix those two together. We'll again wipe off our brush to keep the colors pretty clean. And next we'll go in with a little turquoise, bring in that light blue color, and add that to the top. That is so pretty. Oh my gosh, I love that. Alright, we'll add that to the one side of this ornament. And for all of this work here, you can see that I'm using this kind of black finer brush. This comes in one of the Ranger sets with the perfect pearls, or you can buy them separately. But the nice part about these brushes is they've got really stiff bristles to them, which is one thing that you want when you apply the perfect pearls, because it kind of pushes the pearl into the surface, which is something that you really want to happen. So then I'm going to take this brush. This also comes in one of the sets, or you can buy it separately. And this is just going to kind of stipple it into the cardstock. You want to give it some pressure so that it gets kind of pushed into all of those areas and almost gets set into the ink there. Alright, now this is the golden egg when it comes to applying perfect pearls. This is my favorite tool because it's really easy to wipe off the surface. You want something that is kind of softer like this so that it doesn't pull off the perfect pearls, but that it gets everything off the surface. So we'll go in with this brush. It's by far the best brush I've found. It's from Tonic and Nuvo. It's called a surface sweep, and it just does such a great job at picking all of that up. And it can also be used to like clean glitter off of your surface. It's really good at getting all those fine details and making our cardstock super black again without any of the pearl powder sticking anywhere. Alright, next I'm going to stamp down the branch image using a little bit of Versamark ink again. And I'm going to just stamp a few of these up here at the top. So I'll stamp one down, And then I want to add a few more in so that we can kind of have them hanging out a little bit further and reach the other ornament as well. All right, so once we've got those branches stamped down, we can go in with more of the pearl powder. And I'm just going to kind of bring it in randomly. We'll bring in a lighter green first. This one is the Forever Green. Kind of put it all over here. Wipe off our brush, and then we'll move into our Festive Green. This color is a little bit darker. And we'll finish it off with this to give it a little bit of depth and shading, which you can even do, believe it or not, with the Perfect Pearls, which I think is so cool that we're able to add several colors on. I do kind of each chunk separate so that the ink doesn't dry while we're trying to apply down our Perfect Pearls. So that's why I stamped these two separately. And then once again, we'll go in with our bigger brush, pat this in. Once that's all complete, we can then take our surface sweep or our big fan brush and wipe it off of our surface. Look at that clean shine up there as well. Love it. Last but not least, we'll go in with our string image and stamp that down. And for this, I'm just gonna use a little bit of pewter, which is this beautiful silver color. And you don't have to add Perfect Pearl everywhere. So for instance, I did it to the top here, but I just want it to wrap around this branch. So I'm only adding it to the bottom half, and then the top half will just be that clear ink, and nobody will see it once it's all dry. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. Then we can wipe it off of our surface again to remove that powder. The silver kind of mixed with the green up here, and to fix that, all you have to do is just go back in with a little bit of that green powder and go back over top, and it'll kind of replace a lot of that silver that went in there. But that doesn't bother me too much. All right, I've got this beautiful and shiny scene that I want to set. So I'm gonna take my water bottle, my spray bottle here, and all I'm going to do is just kind of mist the surface here. You wanna get it pretty saturated with that water, and I like this distress spray because it's gonna give it a pretty fine mist over the surface, which is what we really want. We don't want any globs going everywhere. And then I'm gonna dry my desk here, but then I'm gonna just go in with my Ranger heat tool. I like this one because it's nice and quiet, but it's also gonna heat the cardstock and kind of dry things quickly without overheating it like some other heat tools will do. I don't love it for embossing, but I like it for kind of drying anything else. All right, and that water sets that onto your card making project, which I think is really awesome. It kind of helps bond that pearl to the surface. But if you do want to use any other sprays or any other sealants, you totally can as well. Guys, I forgot to do a sentiment, so I'm just gonna take the simple Merry Christmas from that same stamp set. And once it's all stamped down, we can go in, and I'm gonna actually take the basic Perfect Pearl color. I really love this one and all the shine that it gives on the project. I'm just going to grab a little bit on my brush and add it in here to do my sentiment. For this card, I want a little bit of a different looking edge, so I'm gonna go in with the Tim Holtz Decal Edge Trimmer and cut this deckled edge on both sides of the card, and I'm just cutting a little bit off so that there's just a tiny bit of a border. And all right, there is the finished card. I love how this turned out with the Perfect Pearls in the most basic stamping technique to get them down and on the paper. It is such a shiny and beautiful Christmas card with that brilliant Baubles set and that really beautiful deckled edge as well. I love how this one turned out. All right, for this next technique, I'm gonna go in with the lovely Lantanas stamp set, and I love this lined image from it that we can use. I don't think I've used this image before, so I'm kind of excited to get it out and use it on today's card. So I'll bring in a little bit of my Stark White cardstock. We'll go in with our anti-static powder tool to make sure there's no static because we're going to do some embossing. And then I'm going to stamp it down in some jet black archival ink. Ink it up here. We're going to do some watercoloring, and this ink is going to be nice and waterproof for us. I'm going to stamp it down. And then the jet black archival stays wet just long enough to add a little bit of clear embossing powder over top, which is awesome because I like to kind of use it as a clear barrier for when I watercolor. All right, next I'm going to scoop out a little bit of powder and make kind of a palette of color. To do this, I've just ripped a little piece of my cardstock, and I'll use it to kind of scoop out a little bit of that powder because a little bit goes a long way, and trust me, you don't want to try dumping these on your surface. Ask me how I know. All right, so I'll go in with a little bit of water, and I'm just going to gently kind of spray from above to add a little bit of water to each one of these colors. And I'll also spray a little palette of water to the side. I do this on my surface, not in a big glass, so that I don't spill it. And then I'm going to grab a different brush. This is one of Ranger's artist brushes because they're finer and more detailed. And then I'm going to add down a little layer of water like I usually would onto my surface. This is to help just kind of move and blend the colors before they hit the cardstock. And then we can go in and start our coloring. Now for the center here, I'm going to start off with a little bit of sunflower yellow, and you can already see that when you take a little bit of water to this, it just kind of liquefies and turns that like beautiful and iridescently shiny liquid. So I'm going to go in here and start painting a little bit of that down. And then embossing over the black is really helpful to keep those lines in there and to keep them showing. It acts as kind of that resist, which is really great. And it's going to keep those lines nice and solid because these are kind of slightly opaque with all of the beautiful mica that's inside of them. And then we'll take some of this purple and finish it off on the edges. I love the color that this purple adds to the edges and how it blends together there. And then of course, if you want to go back and forth to kind of blend the colors together, you can of course do that and kind of blend them a little bit more. All right, we'll do the same thing with this, with the leaves. I'm gonna add down that lighter color first by mixing it together with just a little bit of water and then adding it down. And then we'll go in with the darker green and add that down as well. And now if you want a little bit more shine and less kind of movement of the color, you can go in with more pearl and less water. It's really up to you to kind of find the right mixture for you to create the perfect watercolor. All right, so there is the finished product. It has that beautiful shine as you kind of tilt it in the light. And like I said, the more you use on some colors, the more shiny it's gonna be, which you can kind of play with the different ways you add the water. But then when you go in, it's not gonna come off on your finger at all because it's completely bonded to the paper already with all the water we added, which is super cool. Then of course you can take a piece of cardstock and take the leftover pearl and kind of dip it into your cardstock to get a really cool kind of watercolored, almost marble background that's got that beautiful shine to it. And once this background is dry, it looks completely stunning. I love all that awesome shine in there and just how random and kind of marbly it is. So that's a great thing to do with kind of the leftover pearl on your surface. Now next I'm going to show you what's so unique about stenciling. So I'm going to grab my bubble wrap stencil and place it over top of my black cardstock here. And then I'm going to go in with my Versamark and a domed foam blending tool. Now you could totally apply it in a couple of different ways. You could of course go direct to surface through the stencil and get that effect. But what I love about going with a foam blending tool through the stencil is we can choose how much of it we want to do, right? So I'm going to go over top of the surface and do a little bit of blending. This ink's a little bit sticky, like a little bit stickier than my other ink, so it's hard to get a complete blend. But the cool part about the domed tool is we can really easily fade out and create a beautiful background, but a nice faded one. So we don't have to use the whole stencil. It's not like stamping where we have to, stamp the whole image onto our card. This is really cool and unique because we can create a background focal point directly in the center of our card and have it fade out. Then I'll bring a little bit of my pearl powder in Sunflower Sparkle, and this is what I use to kind of color in the center of that flower, so I'll kind of coordinate with that. Then we'll go in with our larger brush. If you're doing a larger area, you can just use the large brush straight away. I'm going to bring in a little bit of that powder, and you can see here that as we're covering this surface, it's not a harsh edge, which is really amazing. That's what I love about that tool. It fades out just like the ink that we applied on the surface, so we can get a really beautiful background in a section of our card and brush off any of the excess. You can see just how easy it is to clean off the rest of our black cardstock. Then I'll again spray down just a little bit of water to help set that in place. And we can heat set this to dry it. And once that's complete, I just love the background that we created. And like I said, that easy fade around the edge is what I love so much about stencils and applying them with this pearl powder. I'm gonna cut out our focal point image that I just colored in from the lovely Lantanas set. And for this, I'm using my Fiskars Spring Assist scissors. If you guys have been here for a while, you know these are my tried and true scissors. I love them because they have that spring assist, so your hands don't get tired because they kind of spring back out at you. And also they're really able to get into all of the fine areas of the image, which makes it super quick and easy for cutting them out and getting into all the details. And I'm just gonna take my focal point image and adhere it kind of along the edge of our background that we faded out. All right, and this set is full of great sentiments, like I love that you are so much stronger than you think, but today I'm gonna go with something simple and just do the sending love sentiment. I'm gonna curve it around the image, which is something I've been doing quite often lately if you've been watching my videos. And to do this, I'm gonna take my sentiment acrylic black. I love these lines on it for this, because I can take my sentiment, bend it, which is great about photopolymer, is you can bend it like this, so that it meets both of those lines, and then it'll be an even curve, and then we can kind of make sure that it's gonna fit perfectly. I love that. There is the finished card. We finished things off pretty simply with that lovely Lantanas flower on top and that beautiful sentiment, but I love how this background fades out like that too. It's so much fun, and the shimmer from the watercolor matches it so beautifully. Alright, for my last card, I'm going to go in with an embossing folder. This is the Altenew Folk Art Motif 3D embossing folder. I'm going to take a piece of my black cardstock, place it in here, fold it down, and we'll run this through my die cutting machine. Because of course we couldn't go a video without me awkwardly die cutting in the background. I'm going to place down my embossing folder, and in my machine I just need one plate on top and the platform, and I can run it right through. Alright, and here is the result. I just love embossing folders so much. Look at all of that amazing and beautiful texture you get. Alright, and for this, I'm just going to go in with a little bit of my Versamark ink, and I'm going to rub it very gently on top of the surface here, and it's going to hit the raised points of my embossing. So I'm going just light enough so that it's kind of touching the surface there, and I'm not doing anything more than that. I just want it to hit all the raised points so that we can make those shiny and leave the rest of our background pretty plain. Alright, then I'm going to take my colors here and we can start off and just start adding our pearl powder down onto the surface. And you'll see as we kind of hit the cardstock here, it'll all kind of go down a little bit differently. Since we didn't add the ink completely solid to any area, it was added kind of by surprise. So we'll kind of see what sticks and what doesn't. And it just highlights the surface area where we've embossed, which I think is super cool. It just adds a little bit more dimension and color to the texture that we've already added. Alright, we'll dip into a little bit of gold. For this one, I'm also kind of mixing up the different powders that we use, and it's kind of a cool image where it mirrors on both sides. So whatever color I add to one side, I'll do the same on the other side as well. I'm just gonna kind of mix in. Here I'm using a little bit of that sunflower sparkle. I'll bring in a little bit of pink gumball as well to some of the flowers and different areas in the image. The cool part about this is I'm just kind of spreading out what powders I use and where to add some color dimension and variety to it. Then again, here's where the magic comes in. We go in with our surface sweep and kind of wipe our background off, and then you get to kind of see where the ink is going to stay in place and where there was no ink, which I think is super fun and cool. Alright, so once I've wiped everything off, it almost gives us this cool distressed look because it did go down in some areas where you can use the ink pad a little bit lighter there if that happens to you and you don't want that effect. But I'm going to go in with a little bit of water and spray this down to set it. And then of course, go in with our heat tool again if you're impatient like me, and heat set that. I just love this background so much, and then of course all you need to do to finish it off is add a sentiment, add this down to a card, and it'll just stand out so beautifully. Alright, there's the 3 projects that I created with lots of different perfect pearl techniques and tips for today's video. I hope you guys really enjoyed this so much, and leave a comment down below on which project and technique was your favorite from today's video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up and click that subscribe button down below so you never miss another video like this one from me, and I'll see you guys very soon for another card making and crafting tutorial. Have a great day. Bye!